Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. So where we're going to be kicking off the study today is on page 15. And we're diving into Bill Wilson's 12-step experience. And what we spoke about last week was Bill Wilson having the powerful spiritual awakening, spiritual experience. And what happened is that happened after he took the actions that later became the 12 steps. So he takes the actions of the 12 steps and then has the spiritual awakening. That is important because that is the order. I think I got to show up and get all spiritual. No, I got to just show up and take the actions of the steps and spirituality will come. That's the order. And then what we saw right as we were leaving off last week, Bill Wilson had a profound spiritual awakening, one that is known of the luminous variety, a white light spiritual awakening. And it was powerful. And it mirrored an experience that his paternal grandfather had had, and he tied all those loops and, tied that together. But we saw on page 15, which is where we're picking up for those that just joined us. Page 15, welcome. I'm glad you're here. We saw on page 15 that he was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment that sometimes nearly drove him back to drink. So on page 14, he has a white light, powerful spiritual awakening. And on page 15, he's riddled with pain and self-pity and resentment. And I know you guys could never relate to anything like that. Not you guys, but for somebody like me, I know what that's like to be living my life and just get smacked by waves of self-pity and resentment. And what did he find to be true? When all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. And this, what we're taking from that before we dive in, is the idea that these 12 steps are not a set it and forget it program. I don't work a set of steps and then I'm done. I've got to continue to take inventory every single day. I've got to grow in prayer, in meditation, and I have to work with others. And that's where we're diving in. So page 15, second full paragraph, it's right at the bottom half of the page. We commence. Page 15, second full paragraph, we commence. So we commence to make many fast friends. And if you're like, girl, I know you're a bit of a loose woman. I don't know if I would call you a fast friend. Rude. I just started. Don't be calling me out on my character at the very beginning of the study. Wait a little bit. A fast friend is where you have that like almost instant connection. If you guys have, it's interesting. One of my most like ignored suggestion from sponsees, and believe me, I've got some ignored ones. But my most ignored suggestion is the idea of like, hey, when you're out of town, go to a meeting, go visit a meeting out of town. And if you've ever had that experience, you know what it's like to go in a room full of people that you have never met before and have almost instant connection. You know what I mean? That fast friends. And that happens here in the rooms of 12 steps. And it says, a fellowship has grown up among us, of which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part. And I know if you're here hanging out today, you guys probably are like excited about the big book, or you have been dragged here against your will, in which case, please let me know and we will send help. Because if you're hanging out with me, you either got to be truly desperate or somebody's dragged you here. Welcome. But the reality is, the fellowship is not just the fellowship of going to meetings. There is something that happens. I'm not anti-meeting. Meetings are great. They are fun. They're delightful. And if you go to in-person ones, sometimes they have coffee and beverages and snacks. Snacks sometimes they have, right? And then if you're coming to online ones, heck, you don't even got to wear pants. It's delightful. But if you're not wearing pants, don't stand up. Please stay in the seated position or turn your camera off. That's just polite. You do you. But that idea, like they're great, they're wonderful. But the fellowship that they're talking about, that Bill Wilson is talking about, is the fellowship that was created, one alcoholic working with another. That fellowship that, because there was no luxury of just hanging out in meetings, he had to go and create it. And that is powerful. So if you are enjoying the fellowship that we have, just coming to meetings, amazing. But I would encourage us to create that fellowship by carrying this message to others. And it says, the joy of living we really have even under pressure and difficulty. And that is a promise. And that is powerful. The joy of living, not just don't drink, don't get high. I'm happy to be here. Isn't it better now that I'm sober? You know what it's like when, and I'm sure nobody's ever run into anyone like this where you, yeah, or been, where you go to the meetings or you are this person and it's like the misery is radiating. Before the meeting, we were talking about how that used to be me, where I would suck the energy out of the room. And I was miserable and y'all knew it. You knew it. You could, oh, girl, somebody needs steps, and I was miserable. But what we're saying, and I was staying sober, but I was miserable and I was sober and I didn't want to be here anymore. Anyone relate to that? Like the obsession to drink to use, well, yeah, you guys know. I don't want to drink. I don't want to get high. I don't want to act out on that compulsive behavior, but I don't want to be alive. But that's not what is promised to us. What is promised to us is the joy of living. Joy. That is not, I'm happy to be here, happy to be sober. That is something that is coming from the depth of who I am. That like joy, real, powerful joy, not happiness, joy. We really have even under pressure and difficulty. You see, this is a way of living that has to work when life is happening because life happens. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I think I get sober and I should be immune from life because life can be a little lifey, especially on the Mondays. Am I right, Ben? Mondays, right? It's a little lifey. And I say that with humor because of course, why shouldn't we say it with humor? But there is real pressure and difficulty in life. To be a human being is to experience the human condition, which is to say grief and loss and pain and suffering and our own mortality and the aging process and and breakups and like all of that. We are not immune from that. But what we are promised is a joy of living even under that pressure and difficulty. That is powerful. And I want you to know that has been my experience. I promise you, I got difficulties. I know some of you would be like, are you sure you are not the difficulty? Just showing up in other people's life. I haven't been difficult, but I promise you I have difficulty. And I promise you there's a difference between how I show up to life, a number of years ago when I am sober, but I don't want to be alive, and how I show up to life today. I'm not saying perfectly. I'm not saying I don't have bad days. Oh, you should check my inventory. I assure you I do. But how I'm able to show up is radically different. So it says, I've seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. The path that really goes somewhere is these 12 steps as a way of life. And I want to point out, we have seen hundreds of families, again, families, their whole family would take the actions that are our 12 steps. This is a way of life that works for everyone. But it is not a vacation destination. Do you know what I mean? It is not like I landed in Cabo, I'm chilling on the sunny beaches of Havana. Do you know what I mean? It's a journey. I've got to continue to do it. And it says, the path that really goes somewhere. I've seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. And that was their experience. I have experienced. What we are not talking about is ideas like that could happen. No, that is what happened. And that is what can happen today if I'm willing to take the actions as outlined in this book. Business and professional men have regained their standing. Welcome, we're on page 15. And it says, there is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. That is another powerful line. that has become more true as time has gone on. Because when this book was published in 1939 and written in 37, 38, it was a bunch of middle-aged white dudes. You know what I mean? And that were living in Ohio and New York. But that is one of those lines that has been prophetic, which is to say, has become more true as time has gone on. Hey, buddy. My dog is like, I want pets right now. Timing is everything with him. I love him. But the scarcely any trouble of misery which has not been overcome among us, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt in 2024, the trouble and misery that you might be experiencing today, the legitimate pain and suffering that you are experiencing today, the heartbreak you are experiencing today, that truly in 2024, you are not alone. And deeper than you are not alone in your pain, that there are those of us who have gone through it, who have walked through it, who have moved through it, and who have been on the other side and will take your hand and help you go through this journey with it. Do you know what I'm saying? That has become more true. In one Western city, that's Akron. Akron, woo, just if you're writing in your book. And its environs. The environs would be the suburbs and like little towns around Akron. Cuyahoga Falls, that's one of them. When we went out to Akron, our hotel was in Cuyahoga Falls. So it's like, oh, I got my Ohio geography. Bill was there. Eileen was there. It was delightful. All right. So in one Western city, Akron and its environs, there are 1,000 of us and our family. So there wasn't 1,000 when the book was first published, but that number was edited after the second edition was published because that was reflecting what was happening. And again, 1,000 of us and our family, because the families would take this course of action and would recover as well. And this next line is important. It says, we meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. We have meetings to help others, to help newcomers, to help those that are hurting, to help those that are struggling. No worries. I'm so glad you came. Yeah, it's so lovely to see you. So the reason we have meetings is to help the newcomer, to help those who are suffering. And again, I am saying this as somebody who likes meetings. I enjoy them. They're delightful, whether you wear pants or not. Actually, for those that just joined, I want to say in person, pants always in person. Zoom, pants optional, contingent on where your camera is pointing or camera on and off. Could you imagine for those that just joined late? And I'm like, pants optional. What meetings are you going? Oh yeah, Rebecca, she's here. She was also in Ohio with us. You had your camera off, so I missed you. Rude of me. Hanging out in Ohio. The cool kids. You're all cool kids. I'm so glad you're here. All right. So why we have meetings is to help others. And we go to meetings and we do feel better. But that is not the purpose of meetings. The purpose of meetings is to help those who have not as of yet found this solution, who has as of yet not found this way of life. And I say that as somebody who means that, but I will also say sometimes it can be really helpful when we are trudging this road and we are carrying this message and we do not live in a place that has, like, God bless Zoom. You know what I mean? Zoom has made it so easy to find each other. Those of us who are excited and passionate, about this thing. But there are places in the world that do not have pockets of enthusiasm. People that are excited. Yes, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Maureen. We have learned that my attention has only gotten worse. But there are people that do not have pockets of enthusiasm, and it can be hard to carry the message in places where people aren't always interested in hearing it. And so it can be helpful to have a meeting that fills you up, a meeting that encourages your spirit, a meeting where it's like a pep rally for 12 stepping for God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. And it's like, yeah. And so that we can go out to the world and help those that need it most. But that's what we're called to do. Let's go help others. At these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons, right? That's pretty good. We are growing in numbers and power. So not just numbers, but the power. And it's not like we have acquired certain investment opportunities and climbed the corporate ladder. No, the power is the power to recover. The power is the power of God. The power is the demonstration of God's power working in our lives. That's the power we're talking about. Goes on to say an alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. A drinking alcoholic is an unlovely creature. That's what it means to be in his cups. And that, I mean, we know that's true. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, so it's a lot of work. Comic, and yep, they are. Tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. I want to emphasize way of life. This is a way of life. But I also want to talk about that poor chap. That poor chap was Bill C. And he was a Canadian. We were looking into his obituary notice the other day. Because that's the fun things that we do here. Come and join us. Yikes. So Bill C. Bill Cousins, or William C. Cousins was his name. And he committed suicide in 1936. He passed away October 28th of 1936. And I won't tell you, how he committed suicide, but he committed suicide in Bill Wilson and Lois Wilson's home. And that was after he had lived with them for a year. So they had brought him into their home, and he was living with them. And Bill C. was not just an alcoholic. He was also a compulsive gambler. And so I guess they didn't see him a lot while he was there, because he was off gambling. And also, doesn't that speak to the importance of, really doing this thing? Not, then at least I'm not drinking, right? I've got to really do this thing. And after he had been during that time of living with them for a year, likely because of his gambling, he had stolen $700 worth of clothes and luggage from Bill and Lois. And what I find so interesting about that is that I had to find all of that information, because I am a nerd. And I go on these I'm like, oh, who's that? What did he do there? What's going on there? That's how my brain works. I had to find that information. Bill Wilson is not telling us this information. And I want to make a note of that, because Bill Wilson is telling us one poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. And he is making it about us as those of us who read this book. Why is there a apostrophe? Why is there apostrophe after numbers and power? Yeah, the apostrophe goes to the bottom of the page. And on my book, so we had a question in the chat. Feel free to put questions in the chat, but do know that I will go off on a tangent. That is guaranteed. So ask questions at your own risk. Semi-pertinent questions. So if you go to the very bottom of the page, in my book, it says in 2008, AA is composed of more than 100,000. Nope. It says a whole bunch of groups. I really cannot do that number at this hour. We're going to give up on that. A wackadoo of groups. A whole lot of them. And so if you have a newer big book, it will be even more. So it's just saying hey, just have a look to see that this is growth. Absolutely. I love the question. So going back to this poor chap, Bill Wilson is giving us the information about Bill C., this gambler who passed away. He's giving us this knowledge that working with others is sometimes going to be tough. And he's giving us the reminder that this is not what we are dealing with is a pretty horrific illness. We are dealing with a fatal illness, and not everyone we work with is going to want to do the work. So he's preparing us for the gravity of the situation, which is alcoholism. But he's also making it about the poor chap. He's not throwing this guy under the bus. He's not saying how much he, fourth edition states. So we got Scott the update. Yeah, everyone put in your numbers about what your book says, and we will see that I'm actually not able to read numbers that high, like that quickly. So you just call me out on that. Woo. Uh, but we're also making it about that poor gentleman who was unable to grasp this way of life. And what is my experience? Well, I'll tell you what my experience is when I'm nowhere near the spiritual beam. I make it about me. I got to tell you what I went through and how hard it was for me and what about me. And Bill Wilson didn't do that. And that to me, I know sometimes when we go through Bill's story, we're looking at his ego. To me, to me, I love the numbers coming in. It's like, oh, how many groups do we have in whatever year it is? But to me, that speaks of the power of God working in his life. You know what I'm saying? That he's able to not make it about him. And the humility that at this point in his life, he absolutely had. So there is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. There is like a vast amount. Like we're meant to have fun. We're meant to enjoy this. I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity. Levity is that ability to make jokes and to like not take ourselves so seriously. And that worldliness is to be a part of the world, to be a productive member of society, not me, but all y'all that are productive members of society. Actually, my former sponsor, she always said, oh, Paige, you could be a nun. Which I was like, wait a minute. I don't think that's a compliment. I mean, I do think I would like to be there's some I could use some quiet time away from people. I could use a little bit of quiet time. Also, I could have more sex conduct inventory to write if I wanted. You don't know, sponsor. Uh, so the other day I was doing a lead share, and somebody came up to me after and was like, "Did you used to be? Did you used to be a theater kid?" And I assure you that is not a compliment. Oh, so you guys know. Oh, thank you, Maureen. I think Maureen put in how to say it. 124,455 groups in 2022. And I will take no credit for being able to read that independently. It was all Maureen. Thank you, Maureen. Uh, worldliness, part of the world. Levity, probably just what happened. That might have been some levity. And it says, but just underneath there is deadly earnestness. And that earnestness is that sincerity. And it says, faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. And I want to emphasize this faith and has to work. So faith is not an idea, faith is not a feeling, faith is action. If you're kind of like, oh, what do you want about? What I'm talking about is faith is not this nebulous concept that I try to throw at a situation. I demonstrate or I grow faith through taking surrendered action. And what we're saying is that this faith has to work. So it's not an idea. It has to flow through me 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. I will not, yes, absolutely. Faith without works is dead. And that is the theme that we see throughout this book. When we talk about faith without works is dead, or faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish, what that means is I can believe in the power of God. I can believe in the power of 12 steps. I can believe in the power of my sponsor. My sponsor doesn't have power, but I can believe in my sponsor's experience. Well, I don't know. He might have power. He can probably run faster than me. I haven't raced him, but power flows through him. But the idea is, if I have faith, but I do not take the actions, I will drink again. I will use drugs again. I will compulsively overeat. I will compulsively undereat, or I will place that first compulsive bet. I will gamble again. I will, whatever brings you to this study. That's what I'm saying. So I can have faith in God, but if that faith is not matched with action, I might argue I might not have faith. But if I do not have faith and action, I will drink again. I will use again. And it is faith and action. Faith without works is dead. And that's what we're talking about. And by the way, it's not just some action. It's not a sort of 4th step and a little bit of a 5 and maybe a 9 or 2. Do you know what I mean? It is all of it as a way of life. And again, that's the urgency. There is a deadly earnestness, an urgency. It goes on to say, most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. Utopia, in the original manuscript, it said heaven. But there were some religious groups that were like, you can't say heaven is here and now, because that's not what our religion believes. And so they didn't want to offend anyone. So they took that out and wrote utopia. And utopia is this place of ideal perfection. That is what utopia is. And it's an interesting thing. Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. We have it with us right here and now. And where can God be found? Right here and now. Here and now. That is where I can find God. And I don't mean to go on to a and I promise it's not theological tangent. But I'll tell you what my experience is. Where have I found hell? Where have I found hell in my life? I promise you, it has been the here and now that I was living. You know what I mean? And often dredging up the past and afraid of the future. But when I am living in my active alcoholism or my untreated addiction, I promise you, I am in hell here and now. But I can find heaven, utopia. I can find freedom here and now. And that's where God is. I love the idea of God as a present tense verb. God is here, God is now, and God is an action, is moving, not a stagnant over there idea or a long past idea, but a here and now action and movement. It says, each day my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. I always want to look at that. And I love that line and holding that line up as a benchmark line. That line of each day my friend's simple talk. And his friend was Evie Thatcher. Throckmorton! Yeah! Throckmorton! That was his middle name for those that are like, why are you yelling? Why are you yelling about what's on your hoodie? Throckmorton, Evie Thatcher. So his talk. One alcoholic with another that multiplies itself. And the benchmark line that I want to hold myself up to, right? My friend Terry, we do the study on Friday. He describes this book as a book of mirrors. So then it's not just a book of mirrors for me with my illness. Do I have the illness that is laid out in this book? But it is also a book of mirrors. Am I getting the results that are promised in this book? Am I following the directions as outlined in this book? And I want to hold myself up to this line. Is my sobriety multiplying? Is my sobriety multiplying? Because that's what I'm called to do. I'm called to carry this message to others. Now, if you're here today and you're like, no, it's not. What I do not want you to do is go and have a shame spiral. Let's not do that. But not helpful, not useful to anyone. But if our sobriety is not multiplying, that is okay. That just tells me what I need to do is pivot in the actions that I'm taking, how I sponsor others, how I work with others. Or maybe I need to go through the work in such a way that I can take others through the work if I don't know how to do that. Is my sobriety multiplied? And that for me is a beautiful benchmark line. Bill W., co-founder of the AA, died January 24th, 1971. And I won't bother to tell the numbers at the bottom, like, ooh. Oh, you know what? This is absolute ADHD, but I'm going to tie it in. Sometimes when we hear things and rumors and Alcoholics Anonymous, we just take it as black and white and we take it as face value. And sometimes we hear about Bill Wilson's experience as he was dying. I don't know if you guys, anyone ever heard what, happened as he was dying? And there's this thing that people talk about, well, Bill Wilson, he asked for alcohol on his deathbed. That must mean that these 12 steps don't work. And I always want to, if you're like, oh girl, what's the hot goss about Bill Wilson? I will tell you the hot goss about Bill Wilson, and I will contextualize it. A lot of like rumors about him could be, a lot of the very derogatory rumors about him could be traced to a single person, which means it's probably not true, a disgruntled person. But that thing about Bill Wilson asking for alcohol in his deathbed, I just want to point something out. Bill Wilson was a lifelong smoker. This was the custom of the day. I'm not going to judge. God separated me from nicotine. I didn't quit on my own. Like God separated me. So not an ounce of judgment. But Bill Wilson's final days and final hours were him gasping for air, unable to breathe, having hallucinations as a result of that. Yeah, absolutely. He probably did not get the level of care as in that request because of who he was. And I just want to point out the sacrifice that he made, you know. But it was not him on his deathbed all comfortable and having a good time and is like, you know what I would like? I would like a little bit of alcohol. It is a man that was dying a very unpleasant death. So I just want to contextualize that, and probably did not know, because of the depleted oxygen, did not know where he was or what was going on. So I always want to do that. Like when there's like the hot goss and the rumor, the hot goss in the rooms and the tea and the spilling and the, about Bill, I'll talk about it, but I always contextualize it because I think both those things are important. Because I'm sure none of you guys, but there are some people that have some black and white, all or nothing thinking, and will hear that and think, well, the 12 steps don't work and I don't need to do them. Slam the door closed on that little window of willingness. So context. All right. Now let's dive into chapter 2. Page 17, for those that just joined us, there is a solution. And some of you are probably sick of hearing me break this down, but I'll keep doing it. And then I'll help you write inventory on me. So what I want to emphasize is there is a solution. In the rooms of 12 step, we have one solution, and that solution is the spiritual awakening. That is our solution. And that is good news. Because if we had as many solutions as there are alcoholics or as there are addicts, I don't know about you, I don't have time to try all those. I have the imminence of the relapse barreling down on me. I don't have time to try 36 solutions to see if they work. You know what I mean? What we do know, and what my sponsor emphasizes, is that is good news. The fact that we have one solution, because we can verify its validity with our experience. We can see that this solution works because we're here and sober and hopefully, experiencing a little bit of that joy, You got faith working through us, and joy is the natural, result of faith working through us in and through us 24 hours a day. So a solution, that is good news. And the other thing that I always want to emphasize is there is a solution. There is. And I really mean that. If you are new here today, there is a solution. If you have been in and out and in and out and in and out, maybe you think you're a chronic relapser and this thing couldn't work for you, what I want you to know is there is a solution. If you're in one fellowship and you've got something else that's popping up, like the good old game of addiction whack-a-mole that's popping up and popping up and popping up, what I want you to know is there is a solution. If you've been sober a while and life is hitting, and there is pain and there is suffering, you got those problems that are piling up, and you don't think, Paige, your stupid book and these stupid steps and your stupid enthusiasm, what are you, a theater kid? Not really. But I know I give theater kid vibes. There is nothing that could possibly help me. What I want you to know is there is a solution. We have one. And that is the message of hope. There is. Bless you. Sorry, my dog sneezed. I just said, bless you, no. Just if you couldn't hear him sneeze and I'm randomly going, bless you, but I will do that. If I catch somebody sneezing on camera, I have a bad habit for blessing them. And so it goes on to say, we of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I'm going to say some controversial. And whenever I say some controversial, what I want you to know, it's not the most controversial because I still want y'all to like me. But I take the approach that the we of Alcoholics Anonymous was, of course, the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. But my experience is the more that I use this book as a book of mirrors, the more that, oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, it's way better than some of my other habits. Let me tell you about those. I got a list. It's a defects. Sorry, focus page. It says we of Alcoholics Anonymous, so that anonymous. So the we of Alcoholics Anonymous is, of course, the first 180 members. But I really believe, and if you disagree with me, what I want you to know is you are right. You're right, and I'm wrong. But I believe the more of us that do this work, that follow the directions in this book, the more of us are included in the we that we see. You know what I'm saying? That's the approach I take. And I want you to know if you disagree, you're right. But I will say, come join me being wrong. I have a lot of fun over here. It's delightful. All right. So we of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women. And whenever we see men and women, I want to point something out, that statement was as hopeful as and inclusive as the first 100, because there was like 80, and women, not woman, because there was one woman, Florence, my gal Florence, she didn't make it. So Marty Mann is, and that heartbreaking story, Florence, but Marty Mann is gets the credit, so men and women, hopeful and inclusive. And it says, who were once just as hopeless, and I want us to highlight, underline, emphasize hopeless as Bill, because we want to see the transition that we make from hopeless to hope. Who were once just as hopeless as Bill. And here's the hope. Nearly all have recovered. And if you're new here today and you hear me say recovered and talk about being a recovered alcoholic and a recovered addict, and you're like, girl, what do you mean recovered? Like, do you think you're cured? Absolutely not. My inventory will let you know that I am not as white as the driven snow. I am deeply flawed and frequently wrong. You could ask my sponsor about that. But what I want to talk about is recovered does not mean cured. Recovered does not mean I can ever safely drink again. It does not mean that I can ever safely use drugs again. But what recovered means is that as the result of this course of action, the mental obsession, the insane thought that I have when I am as sober as I am today is removed. It is gone from me. And that is what it means to be recovered. But just like I can never, ever safely take a drink or a drug ever again, I can also never safely be not fully engaged in this 12-step way of life. Because if I let my foot off the gas, if I stop taking these actions, if I get complacent, those problems start piling up. The world starts doing it wrong. People don't appreciate me. Some of you guys are like, oh, I know what that's like. Yeah. The world starts to get crunchy. The world starts to get gray. And the mental obsession comes back. But I just want to emphasize for those that are new to the study today, that is what we are talking about, recovered. And that is where I need to get. Because if I do not get to that place where I am recovered, I will drink again. I will use again. I will relapse. I have to get there. And it says they have solved the drink problem. Yeah, don't send God to voicemail. Don't do that one. Also, I don't leave voicemails, so please don't leave me voicemails. Because it's real. I don't like voice notes all day, but voicemails, it's a pain to listen to. So God is so good to us. Don't make God listen to voicemails either. That is pure ADHD. I'm so sorry. They have solved the drink problem. Solved. I am not cured, but the problem is gone. We have an answer, we have a solution, and we have a way of life. And it says we're average Americans. So now, like this, we of course is referring to the first, 80, because I am not an average American. I am a below average Canadian. Uh, I don't know. It says all sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix. And that is another line that has become more prophetic as time has gone on. It has become more true as time has gone on. And it's referencing that in the forewords. So it says, we're people who normally would not mix. And keep in mind, just have a look around and see if we would naturally hang out together. Probably not. I mean, I would want to hang out with you. I think you're lovely. Don't say mean things about you. You're great. I'll spend more time with you. You know what I'm saying? That's how I feel about you. But we all probably wouldn't be commingling, right? It says we are people who normally would not mix. How true is that? But here is also what is true. But there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. Isn't that our experience? Those fast friends, those easy connections, and like quite quickly a deep intimacy with people that you just connect with right away. And it goes on to say, we are like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. And the metaphor that's being made is the metaphor of the Titanic disaster. And the Titanic sunk in 1912. And so this was a disaster that would have been in sort of recent memory for Bill Wilson as he was writing it, but not so recent that it was like super duper touchy. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it's saying. And so the very literal survivors of the Titanic, they went through this experience. And if anyone has went to rehab, you might be able to like relate to this experience. And some of you are like, no, I paid good money. There was no iceberg at my rehab. Although they might have had like an iceberg chart about feelings or something. Or maybe there was an iceberg and you went to a rehab up in Canada where it was chilly. I don't know. But there's this thing that happens and happened to the survivors of the Titanic. They went through this thing together. And they were like, you know what? We are going to be besties. We are going to be friends together. And like, just like for those that went to rehab where you're like, no, when we get out, we're going to go to meetings together and we're going to do sober camping and we're going to do hike and all these activities. And what happened? You fell apart, you drifted apart. And it was like that with the survivors of the Titanic. They had went through this thing together and they were like, man, we need to stay together and hang out and stay in contact. But little by little, they fell apart. Now, I am also, so that's what it means when it says, unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways, right? As we went through rehab or out of rehab and it's all good and we go our individual ways. But I also want to reference steerage to captain's table. And I'm going to reference the 1997, it might have been 1998 James Cameron movie, The Titanic. And if y'all know what I'm talking about, y'all know that had 2 VHS tapes. Oh, it was a hefty movie. And so I really hope y'all remember that one, right? We remember, yeah, thank you, thank you. So captain's table would be Rose. She's up there at the fancy table with the captain and the people of influence. And steerage would be Jack at the very bottom of the ship, the lower class. And what it's saying, the metaphor that we're making is that anyone can be affected by alcoholism. Steerage to captain's table. Also, I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but I always go on this one, so it's not an unexpected one. I was working with a sponsee of mine. This was a couple of years ago, and he was sharing about how unhealthy that movie was in shaping and molding his like idea of what a relationship is. And it wasn't until he brought that to my attention that I realized, oh goodness, that is unhealthy. So what I'm trying to say is if you're looking for a sane, sound sex ideal, I'll help you write some inventory. I got some deets on that in the WhatsApp chat. We got you. And it is not the movie Titanic. That is not, that's not it. Absolutely not. And if you're like, are you sure? Well, I want to point out Rose was engaged to another man. She was supposed to marry that guy and didn't want to, by the way. So really not physically or emotionally available to be in a relationship. And where did they first meet? Well, she was about to jump off the bow of the boat and commit suicide. So what I will say is she's probably got some inner work that she needs to do before she's ready to yeah to get into a relationship. And then what happens? Well, they have a torrid love affair, and I know none of us can relate to that. A torrid love affair, and then 3 days, and then he sacrifices himself for her. You know, she's on a rescue boat, and codependent hops back off, and then he drowns. And all I'm saying is that is not a healthy model for a relationship. And some of you are like, there was room on the door. And I'm like, I don't think the issue was space. I think the issue might have been buoyancy, is what I will throw out. But I promise you that's also not a hill that I'm gonna die on. Yeah, I'll never let you go, Jack. Immediately letting him go. If you're wanting to know how to let go, let God, it's not that. We don't let, I mean, some of y'all actually maybe do need to do that with your exes, like let go, let God, and let them fall into the deep. I don't know. The deep as in his own life, where we're giving him the dignity of his own experience. Do not drown your exes. That's a really uncomfortable amends that I don't want to have to help you make. So Titanic, not good for a sex ideal. That's the takeaway, but if you need one, I'll help you write it. The inventory helps us with this process. Welcome to those that just joined us. I'm sure you're very confused. We are on page 17. So it says, the feeling of having shared in a common peril is common problem, struggle, traumatic incident. In our case, the common peril is the hopelessness of our illness. It says, is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would have never held us as we are now joined. So our common peril, if you're writing in your book today, and I hear that's what the cool kids are doing, if you write in your book, I'll give you a door to be on. That was not, yeah. I don't know, guys. But you can, the common peril, you can make a note that is our physical allergy and mental obsession. And that is our problem. The hopelessness of our condition, of our common peril, physical allergy, mental obsession. Now, if we come to the room, sometimes we hear people share, oh, we're here together because we got a common problem. There is a detox center in Calgary and a wet shelter. So a wet shelter is a homeless shelter that you can only go, like that's meant for people who are using and drinking. Like that's a place for them to go. And I used to go to that meetings at that facility quite a lot because I really enjoyed the ambiance. It's that was my level of drinking and drug use. I'm like, oh, my people. But if you go to any place or any bar where there are a lot of alcoholics, I mean, that is a common peril. And there's not that same unity. So our common problem is one element in that which binds us. But if all we have is our common problem, we will not stick together like the survivors of the Titanic, or like our own experience if we left rehab and didn't do all the like post-rehab activities with our homies that we wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? And so it says the tremendous fact, not theory, not idea, not wouldn't it be nice, but the tremendous fact is that every one of us, every one of us is of course the first 80, but it is also those of us who have recovered. And it says, have discovered a common solution. And our common solution is that spiritual awakening. That is our common solution. And it says, we have a way out. Now, that was going to be possibly one of the titles of this book, but a way out on which we can absolutely agree, and join in brotherly and harmonious action. So the way out that we agree on and the way that we are joining in action, well, that is our program of action, which is to say the 12 steps. That's what we're talking about. Brotherly and harmonious action, the 12 steps. And it says, this is the great news that this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. This is great news, right? It's not great news if all I do is diagnose the problem. Heck, it's even worse news if I can't diagnose the problem. Because if I got the problem, but I don't know what it is, I am in trouble. But the great news is that we have a common solution and a common program of action, a way to get it. So we're not stuck in the hopelessness of this illness, but there is hope and there is a way out. So it says an illness of this sort, and we've come to believe it, an illness involves those about us in a way that no other human sickness can. And I don't know about you, but the idea that alcoholism or addiction is an illness, it was for sure a revolutionary idea in the 1930s, but it felt like a revolutionary idea to me. I wanted to fight that idea because I thought that was a cop-out and I suck. You know, I'm a loser and I hurt people, and no, that's a cop-out. But we have come to believe it an illness. And it says involves those about us in a way that no other human sickness can. It says if a person has cancer, all are sorry for him, and no one is angry or hurt. We approach that illness with empathy, compassion, and understanding. But it says, but not so with the alcoholic illness. For with it there goes annihilation of all the things worthwhile in life. If you've ever seen videos of people doing atomic bomb testing, and the ground, it's just everything that is there is leveled to the ground. That is what we're talking about, annihilation. Everything worthwhile in life, annihilated. It's to the point where it wasn't even there. And it says it engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. And again, I always think of that mushroom cloud where it like grows and grows and it grows, and it affects anyone who is affected by me. Anyone who is in my life is affected by my illness. And it says it engulfs all the lives whose touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents can increase the list. And what I want to point out is, what does this speak to? This speaks to the power of alcoholism. Because unless you are, I mean, fair enough, you're not a sociopath. Do you know what I mean? You're probably not a psychopath. If you're like me, and you don't have to be all the way like me, I know I'm a little weird, but if you're like me, you know what it's like to come to the morning after and know that you broke hearts, to know that you betrayed trust, to know that you did it again and that you've let people down. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, I did not want to do it. I didn't want to break their hearts. I didn't want to betray their trust. Every time I said, I promise I do not want to drink again. I'm not going to drink again. I meant it. I meant it with everything that was in me. I did not want to do it. And I did it again. And I want to point something out. That is the power of this illness. The power of this illness takes me to do things that I never wanted to do, to cross lines I never wanted to cross boundaries I never wanted to cross, and to become somebody that I never wanted to be. I don't want to hurt those that love me. I don't want to do it, and yet I cannot stop myself. And when I can see that, I can see the hopelessness of my illness. This illness has me. Now, I don't have time to keep going, but next week we're going to dive into more and more of the hope. And the hope is that we do recover. The hope is that this obsession goes from us. The reality is a spiritual awakening. This is the hill that I die on. So, you know, when I talk about being, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Just come and join me, though, being wrong. It's fun over here. The hill that I die on is that you can recover. I got some other ones that are a little pedantic, but this is the hill that I really die on. You can recover. If you're here today, there is a solution. If you are here today, you can recover. If you're a chronic relapser, if you're new to this thing, if you have pain and suffering, you can recover. This is the hill I'm dying on. It is available to all of us. And those of us who have recovered, our lives, our very lives, depend on helping you. So please stick around and let us help you. What I'm going to do, because we're right at the hours, I'm going to stop the recording. I'll set it so we can unmute and say a serenity prayer together.